Hello and welcome to a Tuesday edition of Sass Bites. I think it will actually be going Tuesday for a little while now, as Thursdays have filled up. But appreciate you for stopping by here today. We are Sass Bites. You can catch us on Twitter at SassBites, YouTube.com/SassBites for all our previous 40 episodes. Today we are honored and privileged to have with us Roy Tomeij. At Roy on the Twitters if you follow him there, and if you don't, you probably should. He is a co-founder of AppSignal. He's also a freelance front-end architect. I love that word. We'll be talking about that here in a little bit. A big Sass evangelist, and also a trainer and speaker. Hey, Roy, thanks for showing up. How you doing?
Hey, Micah. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I appreciate the last minute, like, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? You want to come on a talk show?
Sure. Hey, I'm a long-time Sass Bites fan, so I was glad I could
Long-time listener, first-time...
finally invited.
Sorry it took so long.
That's okay.
I realize you are the first person outside of North America, I believe. Hopefully I got that right. Outside North America, so you're my branching out into other continents. So
Cool.
This will be a good start. And actually next week, we'll be branching out even more. So this will be a nice trend to be going global here. So the first thing I like to do in these interviews is to talk about what is your Sass story. How did you come to know about Sass, and how has it changed what you do and how you do it?
Yeah, so in 2007, so that's a long time ago,
Yeah.
I was at a local Ruby meetup, and there someone did a short presentation about Sass. And that just immediately clicked, because that was the Sass syntax that's been deprecated by now. So that's not the SESS syntax,
Good old white space.
and not the original Sass syntax.
Oh.
There's one before that, which had the colon in front of the property instead of after it. So if you for those that are watching that know Ruby, there was like a syntax that looked like Ruby symbols. So they've ditched that because it was so far off from CSS that no one got it. So that's when I started, because I was pretty much fed up with the curly brackets and the semicolons in CSS.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the whole significant white space idea, like really clean. I like the indentation because it provided so much context to what I was doing. So I had co-founded a Ruby consultancy back then, so I had the power to just say we're going to switch from CSS to Sass. And people were like, is that a good idea? And I was, yeah, it is. And we're doing it.
And in hindsight, it was definitely a good idea.
Oh, yeah. I've made some poor decisions as well. But let's not talk about those. So it worked out well. So I've been a happy Sass user for 7 years already.
That's pretty incredible. Are you still using indented syntax, or are you back to the curly braces?
No, I'm still using the indented syntax. Unless when I'm talking about Sass with others or doing workshops, or then I use the Sassy CSS syntax because it's easier to relate to for most people. Mm-hmm. So I was at SassConf in New York last year, and we did a show of hands, like who is using the SES syntax and who uses the original Sass syntax. And I was thinking I was going to be 50-50 or something. There's a full auditorium, don't know how many people, but definitely well over 100. And I was 1 out of 5 who raised their hands because we're using the original Sass syntax.
See, in my head,
but I like it. So.
I know, I love the indented syntax. I mean, it's yes, like insanely clean, insanely easy to write and to read. The challenge for me is always, like, I'm always working in a team. And it's that least common denominator kind of thing that always brings me back to curly braces.
Yeah. So I'm working on my first project now, for which I use Sassy syntax, because the rest of the team is used to that.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't lose anything. You get all the power. It's just not quite as pretty. A couple more lines. Yeah.
And if you don't go nesting 10 levels deep, as you shouldn't, it doesn't look that bad.
You don't have this cascade of 10 curly braces at the end of your partial, right?
Exactly.
That's usually a bad sign when that happens.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you purport yourself as a front-end architect on your Twitter account and elsewhere, and I'm thinking, well, I should probably start doing that too, because it's kind of a new thing. It's kind of an exciting thing. Can you tell us a little about why why you came up with that and what that really means to you?
Definitely. So I started calling myself front-end architect in somewhere late 2011, early 2012. I was going to do some conference presentations, and I had little to show for it. Like I hadn't done many conferences before, and I needed to establish authority for one. So calling myself an architect definitely was a good start. It turns out that worked. So I'm going to get to what it means and why I feel it's important later, because for now it's just in the beginning just a business decision. Mm-hmm. So it worked well. Then with new clients, I got to talk hourly rates. Turns out being an architect, you're all of a sudden worth more than a developer, which was a nice coincidence. And by now, I actually believe I have worked on so many large-scale projects that heavily use Sass and rely on Sass that I kind of like deserve the title, if I may say so. Because there's a lot of poor front-end code out there. Like front-end code decays quickly. Like a lot of large projects go into production, and by then already developers feel like the front-end code was kind of like hacked on in the last few weeks to make sure we ship on time. And they think, well, we just pile CSS upon CSS because we're going to rewrite the whole thing in 2 years anyway. So usually front-end is broken as soon as a project goes into production, which is a shame. Like you should think about how to structure your front-end code in the same way as you think about how to structure your back-end code. Make it modular, make it reusable, make it extendable. Most importantly to me, make it predictable.
Testable.
So know if I'm going to copy-paste this piece of markup from one page to another. Stuff shouldn't break. It should look the same. Like it shouldn't be dependent on page classes, and it should be like in its own little sandbox. And a lot of projects just don't. A lot of people working on mostly larger projects don't consider that enough beforehand, and then they need to clean up afterwards. And like refactoring is fun. I don't mind refactoring because you end up with better code than before. But if you have the opportunity to consider your front-end architecture before you get started, you definitely should.
Yeah, you can't refactor the entire code base in the last 2 weeks before launch. It just doesn't work.
No.
So Sass is definitely a big part. Are there other parts to the architecture that you usually pull in? Is there any testing or automation or anything else that you typically employ in the architecture?
Yeah, so I usually work in Ruby on Rails projects, which since a few years now by default comes with Sass. So if you want to write CSS in a Rails project, it encourages you to use Sass, which is awesome and which has been great for gaining more momentum for the whole Sass movement. So I'm sticking to the Rails best practices. So I mostly write HTML and CSS, which means I haven't written any HTML and CSS in the past 6 years. I've written Sass and Haml or Slim or some other templating language. I do some JavaScript, but not that much. If I do, it's going to be CoffeeScript. So compile all the things.
Compile all the things.
Yeah. And recently I started looking into like visual diffs, using Phantom.js to take screenshots of, to create a living style guide and take screenshots of those modules as they are displayed in the style guide, and then take screenshots of the actual application while in development, and then generate a visual diff of those two screenshots. Definitely a work in progress. Definitely not something I have used in production yet, but it is promising, because testing CSS is hard. Yeah, you could test your Sass and your output, but there are so many things that influence the cascade with specificity and overrides and all that. CSS being dynamically added or altered by JavaScript. So I believe that visual testing is going to be the future of testing for styling.
Excellent. Yeah. My last episode, episode 40, was actually all about, I did Phantom CSS, Wraith, Diffuse, and a fourth one. So there's a lot of really powerful tools out there for doing those visual diffs. And I agree that once you get the differences in HTML from page to page, the difference in JavaScript and all the specificity, really what you need to test is what's that finished product look like,
Yeah.
way beyond just what the actual CSS output is. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's going to be a huge part of what architecture is going to be. Last project I did a ton of like behavioral testing. Like we had like every single story we ever had tests in that story. Like had to set up the test, make sure that what we're building actually works. But we never actually talked about like what's the visual testing. Like, are we breaking something else somewhere else? We never knew. So yeah, I think that'll be a huge part. So yeah, front-end architect. I think once I'm up for some new business cards, I might be talking to the HR peeps about that.
Do it.
Definitely. And the more money thing, you can't complain about that, right?
Sorry?
You can't complain about being able to charge a little bit more of an hourly rate.
Definitely.
So you also do a lot of workshops. I was checking out your site that you actually just had a workshop in Amsterdam, right?
Yeah, so there was the annual CSS Day conference in Amsterdam, and they asked me to do a workshop, a full-day workshop on Sass, which is fun because it's a CSS conference that revolves around all the new and old CSS modules and what's going on there. And they felt it was time to have a full-day Sass workshop. So that was lots of fun, and it's interesting that we're like in that position right now, that Sass is in part shaping the future of CSS. Like people are getting used to using variables, so variables are on the radar for the CSS working group. So it's fun that the CSS conferences are getting that and also looking into Sass. So it was a fun workshop. Just get people to it wasn't an advanced workshop, so we first went through the basics, and it turns out that the meaning of advanced is so different to so many people. Like most people, I believe 90% of Sass users, and I'm making these statistics up right now, 90% of Sass users use nesting, variables, and mix-ins, and then simple mix-ins. If they're doing it wrong, they don't take any arguments or any content blocks. You should be using extend, people.
Exactly.
But that's where it stops for most people. So when I started doing these advanced workshops, I thought that, okay, we're going to do something advanced, and the people were lost after 30 minutes. So I'm ramping it up now slowly. Like before lunch, we get to go over the basics again to brush up on those, and then after lunch we just go crazy with like real life use cases. For a lot of people, they use Sass, they know Sass, and they still do stuff in CSS a certain way because they've been doing that for the past, I don't know, 15 years. While they would, if they would like look at the CSS differently, they would see that they have some repetition in there they could easily solve with Sass. So it's just not just about the syntax. Workshop is also about teaching people how to recognize patterns they can use Sass for instead of still copy-pasting lines of CSS.
Very nice. Cool, and it sounds like you're also just on the cusp of, well, you've launched the website, just on the cusp of actually getting the service out the door of advancedsass.com. Can you tell us about what that is and what that's at least going to be here in the future?
Definitely. So the downside of doing workshops not online is that you need to get a bunch of people together in one physical location. I bet there are thousands or tens of thousands or I don't know how many thousands of Sass users globally, but try to get them into the same room on one specific day. Not all of them, but like 20 of them. That's a challenge. So that's when I started doing some online workshops. That fixes part of the problem, but still people need to make themselves available for my schedule. And of course that is inconvenient and doesn't work well. So Advanced Sass is taking the content from the workshops I've been doing, plus fresh content, and the learnings, my learnings from like responses from people and feedback, incorporating that into a new product, which is going to be an ebook, screencasts, videos, and one-on-one FaceTime with me. So it's going to be several packages.
Yeah, should I be paying you for this right now? Is that how it should be going?
Sorry?
Or should I be paying you for this time right now, or is this a freebie?
No, this is a freebie.
Okay, good.
I'm just going to invoice you later when we're up
Exactly.
here. It's going to be a freebie. So right now at advancedsass.com, I have this email sign-up form where people can leave their email address if they want to be notified of changes and maybe get some free content in the meantime. And behind the scenes, I'm just working on content, writing the book, producing screencasts, shooting some videos of myself, and then shooting them again and reshooting because
And then re-editing.
I looked funny or things like that. So that you're doing this live is like every time is interesting.
Yeah, the joy of live is that when it's done, you're done, and you just walk away, and that's all you can do. So
Yeah.
it's a constraint. It's a nice constraint to have because it means it's easy just to set it up and do it, and not have to worry about everything afterwards.
Yeah.
But it sounds like a great service, and certainly something that the Sass community does not have yet. And I know there are a lot of people out there that need this kind of help. It certainly gets my brain going too, of like, what URL should I snag?
Yeah.
So it sounds like it should be a really good
So
service.
I snagged a good one.
Yeah. Well, Sass Bytes is already pretty good, so I can't complain too much. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have sassworkshop.com and advancedsass.com.
Yeah, you're pretty good to go. So any idea, kind of a time frame as to when all that's going to start rolling out?
Not at all. I'm working on another book on modular front-end architecture, which is less specifically about Sass and more targeted towards back-end developers. I've been working on that for like a year and a half, so I should just get my act together and write more. But then I had a baby, and like that takes some time. So that's getting easier now, after getting used to it. So I'm back to writing again.
Excellent.
So I do not have an ETA, but if you sign up for the mailing list, I'll just keep you posted and I won't spam you.
And the more people that sign up, the more and encouraged you will be to get going on that, right?
Yeah. And once I launch, obviously the people on the mailing list will get a sweet discount. So.
Ooh, hey, there you go, sweet discount if you sign up.
Shameless plugs going on here.
Yes. Hey, I'm all about shameless plugs. So speaking of shameless plugs, segue. You have a little service and a Twitter account, Sass_IO, which is a collection of Sass links. And I
so
heard
the website is sass.io.
Mm-hmm. And I heard you're going to be trying to get that going again.
Yeah, so I've been working on that by myself. So doing Twitter searches for all kinds of combinations of SCSS and something else. And turns out there's some high school somewhere in the US that has SCSS as its initials and tweets with that all the time, which totally screws up my search results. But it's a labor of love. So I've been going through it myself and adding links and then adding a short description of what a link is about and then tweeting that as well. And I haven't really updated that since February because of being busy with other stuff. And I can't do this alone. So I'm working on a way for people to actually submit their content and be a curator for Sass.io, which is not a formal role. For now, you can just mention Sass_IO on Twitter with a link, and I'm going to get it up there. In the future, we may come up with just a form to submit something, and everyone can be a curator. It's not like you need to be registered or whatever.
Just you got a nice Twitter handle, so might as well use it, right?
Yeah.
So if you do have Sass links, and I know there are a lot out there, a lot of people are writing a lot more blogs and doing more video podcasts and all those. So tweet those links at Sass_IO, and Roy will get those added to the site and tweeted out for a little bit more extra promotion.
Yes.
So yeah. So getting to some of the meat potatoes of what we're going to be talking about today. Do you have? We're going to talk about a specific talk you have coming up, but do you have any other talking events coming up in the next few months?
I do. I have some in the Netherlands, actually, 2 of them, and they are not about Sass or front-end code.
What's up with that?
Yeah. So I've been doing a lot of speaking. Like I started speaking in October of 2011, and I've done close to 30 conferences now. And sometimes I like to talk about something else than code. So I've been working on a Sass everything just ends up with Sass and a sentence. So I've been working on a talk about neuromarketing, which is called Make Them Click, which is about how our various parts of our brain work together and influence people in buying stuff.
Hmm.
So I've done it 2 or 3 times now, doing it 2 times more, and it's more like a hobby, like a personal, like a pet peeve. And so this is like a sidestep, and I'm hoping, of course, that my talk for SassConf is going to be accepted.
Little shameless plug.
SassConf was awesome last year. So they're doing the selection. It's a blind selection, so they don't know which is mine anyway. So even if they're watching, it doesn't change anything.
Well, who knows? So hopefully your talk gets accepted. It'll be great to have you come stateside again. But the big talk that we want to bring up today is CSS Summit, which is coming up on the July 15th through 17th, correct?
I don't really know.
I wrote it down somewhere. I can double check it.
Yeah, so I trust you.
Yeah, 15th through 17th. And it's an online conference, so it's actually, you're going to be staying at home there, probably a shirt and then whatever. I don't even want to know what you have on underneath. And as everyone else is probably doing the same. So you can sit in your own comfort of your own room and watch this 3-day conference on all things CSS and Sass. So I heard there's going to be lots of Sass sprinkled out throughout the talk. Now, what are you going to be talking about? What's your topic?
So my topic it's called Sass Off the Beaten Path, and it's not about getting started with Sass. It's not about how cool Sass is, and oh look, there's a parent reference. It's not about how to write your own mix-ins and even your own functions, which is like getting more advanced. It's about doing fun stuff with Sass and programming in CSS. So I'm explicitly not calling it programming in Sass, because Sass is just syntactic sugar that turns into CSS, obviously. So it's about a more programmatic approach to writing CSS. You can't do it with CSS, because CSS is light years behind. So you're going to need a preprocessor for that, and my preprocessor of choice is Sass, obviously. So I'm going to do fun stuff. Some of it is going to be like really useful, flipping a whole website, entire layout from left to right to left by changing a single Sass variable. For another example, we'll be writing JavaScript in our Sass, and then have that evaluated by JavaScript, and by that way turning an 8 kilobyte Sass file into a 1 megabyte CSS file. Something you shouldn't do in production.
Everyone loves a 1 megabyte Sass file.
Yeah, especially if you're writing SVG with Sass. But hey, it works. But it's a great thought exercise in using the new Sass 3.3 features and using new string functions and combining that all together to write code that you should never ever put in production. But it's a fun way to learn more about Sass.
Nice. And you've got a little demo you're going to show to us today, right?
Oh yeah. So let me just show you a. Actually, I need to open the right window here. Bear with me. There it is. So this is a rocket.
Yes,
How nice. Let me run this again, because I like flying rockets. So this is a CSS animation, which is like 10 keyframes, so it starts at 0%, 10%, 20%, etc. Mm-hmm. And then the little rocket flies from left to right and downwards, and it rotates a bit. You could do this in CSS quite easily, but what if you want to change the trajectory of this? That will be a pain. So we can fix that with Sass quite easily. So what I'm doing here is, if you take this bit, it is a ordinary list consisting of strings, 10 strings in this list, and then these UTF-8 arrows, they define the position of the rocket as well as the rotation of the rocket. So this is something you're never going to use in production probably, but it's lots of fun to work with.
That's pretty crazy.
Definitely. I can tell some more about the code if you want to, because it's pretty straightforward. Do you want to spend time on that, or do we want to move
No, I
forward?
think we're actually probably going to wrap up because I know I've got
Okay.
a couple meetings to get off to. But you're going to be showing this
We should
demo.
probably, yeah, we
And
should probably attend the CSS Summit conference anyway. So
there you go. So just in case you don't have your ticket yet, or you haven't thought about buying the ticket yet, I've been given the opportunity to actually give away a ticket to CSS Summit. Yes. So oh, there we go. Click. There we go. So what I'm going to be doing in honor of Roy coming on and talking to us about CSS Summit, from the Sass Twitter account at SassBytes, I'm going to be tweeting out in just a couple minutes a quick tweet. It's a little redundant, tweeting a tweet, but you get the idea. I just need you to follow SassBytes so that I can DM you when you do win, and retweet that. And I'll just basically go through all the retweets and figure out how many there are and do a random string generator, a random number generator, and pick one off the list. And I'll be doing that next week on Sass Bytes, again Tuesday this next week, as Hugo. And I realize I have no idea. Do you have any idea how to pronounce his last name? Giradell, maybe? Hugo.
yeah, so probably like that.
Something like that. We'll be on next week talking about how in the world he writes he seriously writes 2 blog articles every week. It's
No,
ridiculous.
it's 200.
Probably 200. Yes, I think that's the correct number. So we'll be talking to him, and we're going to be announcing the winner for the Ticket to CSS Summit. So again, keep an eye out for that. It'll be going out in just a couple minutes. And I want to give a big thank to Roy for coming on and talking to us in such a short notice and talking about this awesome conference that's coming up. So thank you, Roy. And we look forward to seeing advancedsass.com kick off, and as well as more stuff from Sass_IO.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Hey, not a problem, Roy. We will talk to you soon. I'm sure I'll be seeing you on the Twitter.
Cool.
We'll see ya. Bye.